How would you characterize him now? Evil?
I'd say he's an instrument of evil. And as much as a human being can identify with evil, he would be willing to identify with that to satisfy his own goals.
Or would you use a word like satanic?
Well, that's the spirit that drives him.
The expression Helter Skelter is originally defined as an action of undue haste, confusion, or disorder. But as time has passed by, you can't help but associate it with the horrific killings that marked the end of the hippie era.
Manson sparked the 1969 killing spree through Helter Skelter, a term he derived from a popular Beatles song. Charles Manson explains Helter Skelter. Quote, Helter Skelter is confusion. Confusion is coming down around you fast. If you can't see the confusion coming down around you fast, you can call it what you wish.
Do you think that a new generation of Manson followers are spawning?
You do? No, I know it.
Deborah says a decade ago, she was warned by the Corcoran State Prison, where Manson was incarcerated, that followers called Mansonites were spreading nationwide.
My children are coming. I told you 20 years ago.
A scene described by one investigator as reminiscent of a weird religious rite. 5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski. Miss Tate was 8 months pregnant.
Rudy Altobelli lived here for the next 20 years and then put the property on the market.
Everybody said I'd never sell it, never said. 2 weeks later, I sold it.
And how much did you sell it for?
$1.6 million.
Full market value and more than 18 times what he paid for it.
I want to focus on one of the most important albums that came out of the 90s, and that was their 1994 album, The Downward Spiral. And anytime you talk about 90s rock music, you have to bring up Nine Inch Nails and their influence, not just on the decade, but beyond the 90s as well.
So the album was recorded in the house where actress Sharon Tate was murdered by the Manson family in 1969. Trent Reznor spent 18 months living in this house, also recording the Broken EP, as well as Marilyn Manson's Portrait of an American Family at this location. Nine Inch Nails changed the landscape of industrial rock and metal with the release of their 1994 album, The Downward Spiral.
Process members and Manson were known to have hung out at the Spiral Staircase in Topeka Canyon in Malibu, and that both had resided on Cole Street.
Quite recently, Patricia Krenwinkel mentioned him being there, and Robert de Grimston, who was who ran a satanic church at the time, was there. And she said, it was an amazing thing to hear, really. She said that she remembered de Grimston being there, and she said that they thought he was a bad influence on Charlie because he was a Satanist.
The album is a diverse masterpiece and concept album that follows its protagonist, Mr. Self-Destruct, through his downward spiral of drugs, depression, violence, sex, and ultimately suicide.
So Reznor would end up setting shop at 10050 Cielo Drive in Los Angeles, initially claiming he was unaware of the significance of the address when he rented the house.
You can't believe that anybody's going to take that kind of stuff seriously when you're going through it, but evidently they did.
But as many are aware, it is the home of where Sharon Tate and her friends were murdered in 1969 by members of Charles Manson's family. Now, the home had a studio dubbed La Peg that Reznor used for recording both Broken and The Downward Spiral.
When the convicted murderer Charles Manson first heard the Beatles' White Album, he didn't only see his vision through Helter Skelter, though. He also drew connections between the songs Piggies, and Helter Skelter.
Reznor called the house studio where the album was recorded Le Pig, referencing the message that was written on the front door in Tate's blood. You can see the very studio house where the album was recorded from the music video Gave Up, found on the band's 1992 Broken EP. In December of 1993, Trent was confronted by Sharon Tate's sister, asking if he was exploiting her murder. The encounter caused Trent to cry and see things from a different perspective. You're lying! You're lying! You're lying! Reznor moved out of the house after the recording, and it was demolished shortly after.
You got the knife with Sharon Tate style. Sharon Tate style.
Widely known that Marilyn Manson came up with his stage name by combining the monikers of actress Marilyn Monroe and infamous cult leader Charles Manson. Apparently, the shock rock icon was pretty infamous himself in the mind of Charles Manson, as a postcard from the prisoner to the rock star was leaked online in 2012. Charles Manson's bizarre and seemingly nonsensical letter was written by hand and transcribed online. To Marilyn Manson, it's taken me a long time to get there from where I could touch M. Manson. Now I got a card to play. You may look into my nonprofit, ATWA, and give Manson what you think he's coming for, the ATWA philosophy of Charles Manson, an ecological mandate that stands for air, trees, water, animals, and/or all the way alive, remains one of Charles' most quotable messages. System of a Down even named the song ATWA on their breakthrough Toxicity album.
Seen before me passing by.
Another song on the record takes Charles Manson as a kind of figure and connects him with environmental issues, and he's a figure that's probably one of the most reviled figures in America for the last half century. You know,
Atwa is the name of the song, which is, you know, air, trees, water, and animal, and it's something that he tends to really be focused on, and even his so-called family that he's had. That, I mean, there was a method behind what happened there. It's not just about murder, and I don't really...
But what you probably don't know is that one of the most notorious men in the world has a girlfriend. And here she is, 25-year-old Star.
He is the one that knows what's going on. He is the one that is in the truth. whenever nobody else is.
What did you think of Manson when that thing happened?
I don't know what I thought when it happened. I just think a lot of the things he says are true.
I'm into it's more of his ideas and his thoughts on society. The Charles Manson that I'm into.
So what do you think made Manson attractive to young people?
Well, he seemed to have a easily understood, attractive solution to the psychological moral vacuum in certain people. Not everybody, just certain people. And so he was perceived as a source of supply, or what you thought you needed. So that was the attraction.
Is there any connection between you and Robert de Grimston? I think he said, actually, de Grimston and I are one, you know, so he's not denying anything.
Satan to me would be God. You would be God to me. You dig? I can worship anything as God. Everything is God. The sun is God. The moon is God. Everything is God. Except them stupid fucking people who got that shit stuck up in their fucking heads and they won't get rid of it.
I just agree with, thoughts.
The thought has always been here. It's been here since the pyramids have been here, and it's always been here.
This one here is the process symbol. This is stylized. The first one had straight edges that looked like a swastika. This kind of still does a little bit, I guess, but it's...
That whole philosophy of good and evil having to come together and all, I kind of, subscribe to that. We got in trouble for it, because Rolling Stone thought we was into devil worship.
Hitler got that sign from mysticism and reversed it. He did the same thing, only he did it backwards.
She has been seeing Manson, now 79, ever since she was 19. The news today, she says they plan to marry.
It can be any guy. To me, that guy is Charles Manson.
She says she was attracted to Charlie because she was attracted to his readings and his writings on the environment, not his crimes.
There's a hell of a lot of things that I say in interviews that are totally quoted from him, and people end up agreeing with me.
It's the thought still here, just like the thought that he picked up was there when he picked it up.
Charlie is all about Atwa, which is air, trees, water, animals.
Abraxas is a very peculiar and interesting mythological figure that has played an important role within many mystical, magical, and Gnostic traditions. Abraxas is considered by the Catholic Church a demon and is even associated with Lucifer.
A chapter of Ed Sanders' book on Manson, The Family, drew unfounded connections between Manson and the process. Some of Manson's notions of incarnating the energies of Abraxas and going beyond good and evil were similar to de Grimston's thesis of the reconciliation of opposites.
Carl Jung stated in his book The Seven Sermons of the Dead that Abraxas was actually higher than either the Christian God or the devil, and stood as a symbol that incorporated both entities into a single being.
Manson espoused that he was both Jesus and the devil. This is similar to the process concept of the unity of Christ and Satan, or in other words, coming to terms and uniting both extremes of one's personality so that rather than being at odds with one's nature, they are able to achieve a unity in one's being.
Let's be on one side, this is symbolizing the Christ element, and this is symbolizing the Satan element that was called the goat of Mendes.
Abraxas comes from the Greek abrake, and the word abracadabra is believed to have come from his name.
Satan was described as having a high level as well as a low level, and his low level is what everybody thinks of. The high level was magic, literally magic.
The music has made Manson into an Abraxas devil, and I'm sure you would want some of what I got from what I got. It's a far out balanced. Beyond good and bad, right and wrong. What you don't do is what I will do.
How important was music in the life?
Well, it was pretty important. It was pretty important. It was sort of a, how do you say? It was part of the brainwashing. You get to say the most outrageous things in music that would otherwise be scoffed at. but it's amazing how you start to conform to the idea that the music is putting out when it's done in music.
Ghost Dancers, Slay Together, and You're Just in My Grave, Sunstroker, Corona, Coronas, Corona. Marilyn Manson never publicly responded to the letter, but Marilyn did react to the cult leader's 2017 death, sharing his cover of Charles Manson's 1970 song, Sick City.
Sick city, restless people, sick city, driving their houses down to make the sky look pretty.
Hollywood on the run from multiple wildfires raging in Southern California.
It's tragic, and it's getting closer and closer.
LA's on fire.
Take a look at this. The frightening video that went viral today of cars driving right beside a massive blaze. It's like a scene out of a disaster movie, but it is all too real.
But of course he's cracked, all right.
What was your feelings when you say, well, he was Helter Skelter?
Well, he's balmy. He's like any other Beatle kind of fan who reads mysticism into it. I mean, we used to have a laugh putting this, that, and the other in a light-hearted way that people... I mean, I don't know, what's Helter Skelter got to do with knifing somebody?
By 1967, the most famous people in the world are fascinated with the occult and varieties of esoteric pursuits.
You know how the occult is. You get involved in all kinds of under darkness things that are running under nooses, that are running through just, I don't know, you know, it would take too long to explain it all.
It has been well noted elsewhere that many bands from the 1960s were influenced by Aleister Crowley and Thelema, including the Beatles.
And so you see Crowley turning up on the cover of Sgt. Pepper. You see the words, "Do What Thou Wilt," kind of inscribed in vinyl on the inner circle of Led Zeppelin's third album.
Crowley became, in the subculture, a pop hero.
Crowley's message about sexual freedom, about social freedom, about challenging authority, very much resonated at that time. And a lot of people in the late 60s and early 70s very much embraced Crowley and his message. It was a very good fit.
Total freedom for everybody is our goal, you know. That way, you know, it will be a utopia.
People are frightened of freedom. They think freedom, oh, there'll be excesses. Of course there would be excess to an extent, and then it would settle down.
We wonder, one day if I were, I don't know, free enough, what would I do? You are free enough. What?
Let me tell you something.
What do you do? Right. What is it that really gives you a kick?
I'm not constrained pretty well by anything. The tough thing in life is ultimate freedom. Ultimate freedom is the big challenge. Now, I've got it, and I can tell you there's not many of us that have got ultimate freedom.
If it is quite obvious the Beatles were influenced by the occult and the magician Crowley, is it too outrageous to suggest that Savile could have also been?
He knew everybody. You know, he toured up with the Rolling Stones, he toured with the Beatles.
Jimmy Savile knew the Beatles well. In the early days, he booked the Beatles when he was a club promoter. He then went on to tour with the Fab Four at the height of their fame, where he acted as compere and master of ceremonies. In the 1960s, Jimmy Savile and the Beatles were the British pop industry. Both helped to usher in a new era of music, Savile as DJ and Top of the Pops presenter, and the Beatles, who spearheaded the British invasion of America.
The eccentric DJ was beloved by many, even knighted by the Queen.
John Lennon glasses, actually the Jimmy Savile glasses, because I used to wear these and John saw these and he started to wear them.
We've been horrified by child sex abuse scandals in this country, tragically over and over again. But new disclosures in the story of the late Jimmy Savile, an eccentric, flamboyant British entertainment superstar, defy imagination, with hundreds of victims already identified and now even more disturbing allegations coming to light.
But I have to say, Savile beats all of them. He is probably the most prolific offender that we've come across.
God is the fabric of everybody's life,
And God is the fabric of my life. No more religious or less religious than anybody else. So I would not say that I'm a religious man, but I do know who the boss is. Oh.
Satan to me would be God. Dig, I can worship anything as God. Everything is God. The sun is God. The moon is God. Everything is God.
Anywhere, God is all over, not necessarily up there.
The thought has always been here. It's been here since the pyramids have been here.
And you haven't really got to pay too much attention to whether people think that you're not doing the right thing. As long as your conscience is clear, then you're okay.
I just agree with, thoughts.
But soon after Savile died, allegations emerged that he had been sexually abusing children for decades.
The youngest just 5 years old at the time.
Well, he was a lifetime perpetrator of serial sexual abuse against children, the very nastiest kind. And yes, it's going way back to the late 1950s when he started, so the best part of half a century.
This was an organized ring of abusers?
There seems to be suggestions that there was contact between them. We've heard people who were raped as children within paedophile rings saying that Jimmy Savile and other people who were celebrity guests amongst other, not so famous paedophiles.
One of the things which really interested me there was your view about Jimmy Savile and your knowledge at the time that it was going on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think all of us, what we call the peoples, knew what was going on with the BBC.
As bad as we now know it was?
Yeah, we knew. We all knew. We knew that you go to Top of the Pops, what you were facing. It was common knowledge, but it wasn't common knowledge in the media.
Did it stop at the disc jockeys? Did it stop at Jimmy Savile, or were the performers also doing this?
Oh, I have no doubt some of the performers were up to messing around with underage girls. But,
I never brought any harm to anybody. I've never bad-mouthed anybody. It sounds a bit yucky, but it's my nature, it's my lifestyle, and I never thought there was a profit in being bad. There might be a profit for a few days, a few weeks, even a few years. So I had a bit of fun, at nobody's expense.
I thought the process was somehow connected with Scientology or something.
It was a mixture of Scientology and Satanism.
An apt combination.
Well, L. Ron Hubbard started out.
We're sticking with the Express headlines. There were reports in other papers, but the Express dealt with this in a particularly clear way. So the headline here, I was raped at 13 by Jimmy Savile in a Satanist ritual. A victim talking out about her sheer terror as she was tied to an altar and raped by the depraved star, she says, during a black mass. And we've got this one here, which is talking about Savile going to a weird place known locally as the Chamber, which had a ceremonial whipping post in the centre of the room, and the room was decorated with a cult-style pentagram, goats' heads. Now the building exists, but it would appear that since the Savile exposure that it's been completely renovated and redecorated, and all of this paraphernalia has been removed.
Pretty girl, pretty girl. Cease to exist. Just come and say you love me. Never had a lesson. I ever learned, but I know we all get our turn. I love you, never learn not to love you.
Never had a lesson I ever learned, and I know I could never learn not to love you. Come in now closer.
Because 2020 was interesting at the time too. It seemed to go on again, didn't it, from that point? I was thinking particularly Never Learn Not to Love. And
oh, I love that song. My brother Dennis did that, yeah.
Yes, I love that song. So Sunflower then. Let's talk a little bit about Sunflower. Because again...
Much has been made of sort of the myth of the relationship between Manson and the Beach Boys.
It's not Manson and the Beach Boys. It's Manson and Dennis Wilson, my cousin,
yeah,
who picked up a couple of girls hitchhiking and, took him to his home. And then the next thing you knew, the girls invited their leader, Charles Manson, to live with Dennis.
It was sex and drugs. That's what the whole thing was about.
Dennis did tell me some things that he never spoke of to anybody else, other than one or two people, and it was not pleasant. It was not pleasant. So I don't prefer not to speak about it, but let's suffice it to say that his roommate Charlie was. There are many terms that could be said about him, but it was interesting because we had learned meditation just a few months before from Maharishi, and then you have Charlie Manson. So it was the diabolical and the divine. Couldn't be a much more diverse kind of dynamic going on in the late 60s. A lot. Yeah, a bit too much in some cases.
Welcome to the process.
Hello, caller.
Yeah, say, we're currently investigating cults, and I was wondering, do you know about the cult called The Process, a very secretive cult? We have found through that there was a possibility Charlie was involved at one time with that cult.
And The Process is such a fitting name because it's about a process of continual alchemical renewal by unifying the opposites, which are, of course, good and evil. And a lot of the rhetoric that came out of the Process Church was specifically about doing that, about unifying Christ and Satan together.
We were kind of spiritual advisors to George Clinton. He was up for it, We
was on the same path. And they actually went out on the road with us a few places, and people thought they was part of the group too.
They did penetrate the highest tier of British rock royalty, which was the Beatles.
Brian Epstein came regularly. Caleb Ashburton Dunning. Caleb was a real interesting guy.
Caleb Ashburton Dunning, Satanist, likes chaos, catastrophes, graveyards, depravity.
He would go on to be the personal spiritual guide within the Apple building in Savile Row, where he'd read the I Ching and proclaim on all matters to the Fab Four themselves.
And it upset a lot of people because a lot of people don't like to think about Christ and Satan hanging out together. But really that's what we're all here to do, and all the most mystical writings of every religion infer that it is about a process of coming to a unification of good and evil. So
whatever that means, God is a devil, a clever devil or whatever, it opens up to wherever you go, whatever you're going to use, where are we going to survive, how's it going to go? You say, oh, I want to be all these individuals and I want to believe all these things, but then the wind blows in another direction and you say, whoa, that hurts too much, I got to change my mind about something, because like when it comes down and we go down in the basement and you're laying up on the rack, you're going to do whatever the king tells you to do. It's that simple, man.
Tonight, perhaps we can just look at Satan instead of, projecting it out as some evil in the world, and you can kind of look at Satan inside of yourself so that you can lead him by the hand instead of finding yourself in situations where the opposite might happen.
When Manson was arrested and charged with the crimes of the century, His association with the Process Church was explored.
There was a famous book by Ed Sanders about Manson that linked him to the process. Sort of Charlie learned everything he knew from the process.
What do you want to call me a murderer for? I've never killed anyone. I don't need to kill anyone. I think it. I have it here.
It baffles me. It really does. I can't understand why any person would do anything, would kill for another person for no reason. To me, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you got to be hypnotized or something by this person. And maybe Manson had that power.
Black magic.
When you say black magic, what are you talking about? I mean, some of the things that I read in the stack of material, it sounds just absolutely unbelievable. What are you talking about when you say this?
Well, the funny thing is that the actual truth is about as far out as Scientology itself.
So a lot of the guys were interested in studying the way to process the mind, how to clear your mind from past confusion, how to resurrect the soul to be reborn within yourself. So that's where Scientology started, and then they started selling it, and then it got to be the process. And then the Church of the Last Day, the Last Judgment, I sent some people to England. I couldn't go myself, but I sent some people there.
In London, they had this house which housed a cinema and a restaurant, and there'd be nightly meetings. And this was in Mayfair. This was in the most expensive part of London.
The presence, the feeling there was very powerful. The thing is, I knew it was a brainwashing cult, and I thought, this is interesting. What would they do to make me turn out like them? We believe in the unity of Christ and Satan. In the middle there would be a circular altar with a black cloth on it and a red process symbol. And a procession would come in. There'd be the evangelist, the sacrificed, and two junior servers, one carrying a bowl with a candle burning for fire for Satan, one carrying a silver bowl with water for Christ, the symbols of the unity of Christ and Satan, the totality of God.
Everything, it looked sort of like a church. It looked like something you might see in a Catholic church, but turned upside down.
Christ and Satan joined, soul and body one, God's will fulfilled, the new age shall be born.
It's time for the world to bring the last to the first position. Stop picking on the snake. All the snake is trying to do is to live.
I was going to say, when did he come into your life? A better question is, when did you realize he was there?
1974, about 4 years after the arrest. I was in Folsom, and I was standing on the yard one day, getting a drink of water, and a voice spoke in my mind. It was God, I didn't know it. And it says, "Look at the yard, what do you see?" And I looked at the yard, and I could see all these dead guys. Everybody I knew, but I could see the death in their life. And it really scared me. And I started talking to this voice, and I said, "I don't like this." And the voice says, "Well, this is the best you can do." And I said, "Oh no, there's been a big misunderstanding." And I tried to have an argument with it, but it was so normative when it spoke that it was just explaining reality rather than making a suggestion. This was not a suggestion, this was just real. And I looked at that and I go, well, there's been a big mistake. And it was almost as if he said, "Yeah, and you made it, you know." But it wasn't humorous, I'll tell you. But I looked at this and I said, God, I don't like what's happening. And I began to feel really hopeless. All of a sudden, it just turned the light on that, there's no way out. I'm in serious trouble. And that's the first time I really got real with, I am in serious. I mean, I'd heard the jury say guilty. Man, I heard all the charges, and I knew all that. And I'd been 4 years from the beginning to where I was. But this was when I said, God, I need help.
And what should we all learn from the life of Bruce Davis?
Well, one thing you can learn is the wages of sin is death. That should be the negative lesson. You will reap what you sow, even if you don't think you're sowing it. It can come back bigger than you put it in, faster, and you cannot afford it. You need to learn that.
You look very different.
Oh, I know I am. A lot different.
What do you think's changed?
Well, Jesus Christ is the changer in my life. And he's changed my outlook, my future, my present, my relationships, my view of my relationships, my view of myself, everything that's important. Through the grace of Christ, you can have eternity on the right side of God and a meaningful life on earth. Have meaning and significance in your life and the fulfillment that you desire that's in harmony with real reality. That's what I hope I'm learning. All right? So maybe other people can learn. I hope they learn that too.